Joe Mullings with Untitled and Unfiltered, and I'm excited because I've got my first in-studio guests today, and with me to discuss the world of branding and reputation building and PR is Jamie Hurley and Miguel Costa from Lobeline, out in LA, of course. Where else would they be from? Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having us.
It's good to be here. So let me just start out with my opening here. One of the things that we committed to about 4 or 5 years ago was developing a brand, developing a reputation and awareness. And the reason we did that is we wanted to reach a broader audience. In our industry, or any industry, you can certainly approach it in an analog fashion. And if you've got a great message to share, that message can certainly reach people, but only as many hours in the day and as many physical calls or reach out or emails or in-mails that you can send. But in this case, when you understand how to scale digitally and you have a message that's worthwhile, then you can start to really influence and change the world that you live in. And so with that, I partnered with Jamie and Miguel and their organization. And today we're going to just BS over some cocktails around the world of marketing and around the things that you may want to think about doing yourself, or at least understand that goes on behind the curtain. And this is really an unfiltered conversation that I'm hoping you can gain some insight in. And if you're a business person, an entrepreneur, a $30 billion company, or coming out of the gate and trying to build attention and awareness for raising money, for attracting talent, for getting acquired, or just building out your business itself, understanding the role media plays, properly deployed, what it can do for you and the people you're trying to affect change on. So let's jump into that.
Great.
Yeah. So I started, before we ended up joining forces, I started building out my brand on LinkedIn, my B2B business. But to me, LinkedIn is really a B2C business, because while it's a business platform, it's really people you're talking to.
Right. The individuals within the businesses.
The individuals within the businesses. And the way that we met was we had somebody we knew in common, and they suggested they knew what we were trying to do with our True Future series. And they said, you know what? This is an organization that's really good. They're repping, and I'll let you go down your hit list of the people that you've repped over the years. And I said, I'm doing a great job on LinkedIn, and I'm reaching all these people. But there's something bigger, because we wanted to move the world a little faster. So would you share Lobeline with the audience and the history of it and some of the people that have been set off on their journey with it?
Of course. So Lobeline is a 34-year-old public relations firm, is how it started. Now it's a full-service agency that Miguel and my skill sets tie into the digital side. So we've very much leveraged the relationship rather between traditional and digital, and learned how to amplify the reach, if you will, of what a traditional placement would be. But Lobeline as a firm started in the 80s. Our founder, Phil Lobel, has represented some of the biggest names in history. He basically made Brad Pitt in the 80s, Tony Robbins, David Copperfield, George Michael, Blue Man Group, Aaron Carter, anybody and everybody that you can name over the years we've worked with as a firm. And I think, part of our, history and reputation for that 34 years, which is a long time for a company to be around, but also for a company to have a good name. It goes to show
Right.
that you, especially in Hollywood, because it's an interesting city where if you're up to no good, you're done very quickly. So it's one of those cities where if you prove yourself to be able to carry on for the length of time and history that the company has, and have worked with the names that we have, I think demonstrates what our capabilities are. But now, as a firm in the 20th century, where now 21st century, sorry, where now literally the digital world, of course, is ruling the world, but at the same time, the traditional advertising mediums are still there and still more important than ever. So if you're much to your point a moment ago when you mentioned whether you're trying to elevate a brand personally, whether you're an artist, you have a festival, or you in a medtech space or in a life science space, perhaps you have a need to get your product to the market, to educate the public, educate both the consumers and potential people that would be interested in investing in your product. PR it's an avenue where you can elevate that brand, but at the same time have kind of a dual prong effect. It adds legitimacy. It adds that extra layer of, and Miguel said it great yesterday when he mentioned that if somebody writes you up in Forbes, writes you up in CNBC, Business Insider, any top tier media outlet, you've been vetted. They're putting their history, their reputation on you when they're putting out this article.
When you say vetted, what do you mean vetted? Without giving away the secret sauce,
Yeah.
do they just not do a story on somebody? Is there a little work done behind the scenes?
There is definitely work done behind the scenes. I mean, they're vetting who you are, really making sure that what is being told to the public is legitimate.
Got it.
So there are, is truthful, exactly. And there are, TV shows that until that vetting process has happened, and very large national TV shows that we all know and we all have watched or watch, that until that vetting process is done, you won't be on there. There's a very in-depth process to verify that you are who you are. So I think that adds the legitimacy side, and you have been doing the branding side for years. In terms of putting out content and storytelling, through the type of content that you put out, I think were onto something years ago that perhaps the world wasn't quite there yet, or the space that you were in wasn't quite there yet. But your success obviously has shown, what it can do for a brand to have that visual aspect, to have, high quality production content. But now you plug into a machine like Lobeline, where, much like we've done on your personal brand, where we're now telling the world through someone else's eyes, someone else's opinion, which it's our job to make sure that that opinion is on brand for you and obviously is in line with what your ultimate goals are. But being able to then amplify your brand, and again, using an example of being in Forbes, to show a potential investor, to show maybe you're thinking of going public, maybe you want to be acquired. But I think it's a very interesting medium that more than ever, the combo of the three facets, if you will, now from a digital marketing, traditional marketing, and of course what will drive that machine, the production capabilities that you offer, I think it's a very unique time.
Miguel, you bring the PR talent to the table, and both Jamie and yourself, and you really, I know through our relationship, you have really showed superpowers on the digital side. Is that unique in the classic PR world to have it?
And actually, I was going to sort of jump into that. It is quite unique because a lot of agencies are so entrenched on the traditional side. They try to sort of add digital, and we've seen it done, and clients have come to us with poor experiences from other agencies saying, oh, they're really terrible on the digital side. They either farm it out or they have two people doing it sort of ad hoc internally, and it just blows up. It's just terrible. The good thing with us is we come from 20 years of digital experience of just doing digital. That's all we've known. Literally, we've been doing...
When digital started.
When digital started. I mean, we started with AdWords. We were doing AdWords.
With go further than that, what was the Yahoo platform?
Yahoo, Bing. I mean, literally, we started with
Overture.
that, and then once the social networks came online, they allowed advertising, then we sort of caught on and whatever. So we come with that level of experience and history, and we sort of joined forces with a PR company, obviously, that just did the traditional side. And we've actually worked on a project before we even joined forces, and it was a client that we sort of had a test case, and it worked really well. And we're like, wow, there's something really here that's powerful that isn't available out there. So we did that. And some companies are great on one things and other things, and I'm going to toot our horn a little bit here. I think we're freaking amazing on both sides. We're freaking great on PR, and we're freaking great on the digital side as well.
And I would agree to that. So our relationship's been going on now for 5 months or so. And you know, when I came in, you said be patient. It's going to do a lot of work, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it. Everything worthwhile is a lot of work. And just to date, in our first 5 months, and you guys will probably know better than I will, but we've hit Forbes twice, which is a pretty high bar.
Huge.
CNBC, Business Insider, Monster, right?
And several medtech related spaces.
And several large medtech related spaces as well, Fierce MedTech and a couple others. And you know, obviously the content has to be good, but the guidance on the content that you give also is powerful. And you mentioned something earlier we were chatting about where classic PR print is one time only.
Right.
But talk about that.
You know, the traditional, I mean, back then, I mean, not too long ago, literally.
And still today, though.
You got a placement, say, on Forbes, the magazine, and that sat on the supermarket shelf for 30 days, or you got a mailer, and it sat on your coffee table for 30 days or however long, and you threw it out, and that's it. Now that content, because it's exploited on, it's basically amplified across all your social media channels, that lives on forever. That's not archived, you know, sitting at the print shop, you know, waiting for a request for whatever. It's there all the time, and it's useful. No matter how old that content is, it can still be referenced.
Additional reach, additional exposure can be had.
Exactly.
But you hit on a point, Joe, that in the beginning, I remember when I came out and I sat down with you, and you're, you know, respectfully, you're a guy who, you know what you want it to happen now, make it happen. And I remember saying to you in the beginning, trust us. Just step back for a moment. You know, just let us do our thing. Give me a few weeks. I assure you, you're going to look at the speed in which things happen, look at the quality in which things happen, and you're going to get more comfortable. And did that happen?
And no, it happened. It happened in spades. I mean, seriously. And it's interesting because I already had inertia, but on a smaller B2B platform on LinkedIn. And what I want to share with the audience here is, if you're watching this and you know me from the life sciences world, just getting on LinkedIn in the life sciences world is a big step for a lot of firms. They're like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do this. Should I get a PR firm to get on LinkedIn? And the answer is no. You need to get in the pool yourself and start to co-source with somebody else and get out there and learn the ropes. But then, especially in the digital world that's occurring in medtech today, within the next 3 to 4 years, it's likely to be Amazon is going to be one of the top 3 to 4 medtech companies in the world. And remember, you heard this here, because there's only 2 major categories left in the marketplace. When you're a publicly traded company worth $1 trillion, Wall Street needs you to move the needle. And you're either going to be in education or you're going to be in healthcare. Those are the 2 big markets. Amazon already has stepped into healthcare. And why does that matter to what we're talking about today? Here's why it matters. Historically, investors have not, in medtech and life science, have not been tuned into PR. Medtronic doesn't do it. They'll do some PR, but a lot of times, as in the case with J&J especially, it's crisis management PR. Hernia mesh.
Very different.
Right? Or if it's a robotic company dropping shavings inside the patient, that's crisis PR.
Exactly.
But if you're a startup firm right now and you are going for an A round, a B round, or you're later and you're looking for a strategic acquisition, an article that allows you to be more digital than medtech centric, because that's what's happening. You're starting to get more of these non-FDA oversight regulated devices, and you're starting to get venture capital firms coming in to invest in those who know very little about medtech, but when they see you in Forbes telling your story, and we're talking to somebody right now in the UK we both know, who's got an unbelievable product, unbelievable platform, is an ideal candidate. When those investors start to see you in Forbes, on CNBC, right, in Business Insider, that's going to drive valuations up.
Of course.
That's going to scare them
Definitely.
in a good way.
Right.
Write the check before somebody else sees them.
Right.
But you touched on yesterday as well. Let's take that a step further.
Yeah.
The spend, and I have people, in the industry who work on some of the brands you just listed. The spend is now shifting more towards the consumer. So not only are these publications elevating your brand, which of course will help with, the ultimate goal, whatever that be, for the exit strategy of your business or the growth strategy, but now you're getting in front of the public. You're starting to pique their interest because now they're going to be going, depending on what the technology, device, et cetera is, they're going to be going to their doctor and saying, I want this.
Right. Consumer driven.
Right.
MedTech historically has not been consumer driven.
Right.
It's been the doctor told you what to do, and then you just bowed your head and said, okay.
Exactly.
But now more and more you're seeing DTC, direct to customer, and you're seeing those brands now need to get out in front of John Q. Public.
Right.
And they don't do that very well.
No. And the traditional PR methods weren't built to do that, with the companies that they're dealing with, because it was built to educate the public, but there's so much legal mumbo jumbo mixed in with that the general public can't dissect, nor do they care.
Right.
So I think it's an interesting avenue as well, where a company like us, who granted our focus hasn't been on life sciences, but our focus through the history and experience that we built has certainly been building relationships with the media and figuring out what it is the media wants to hear. When we go out to our contacts, they know that what we're pitching them is something that their readers are going to be interested in. We've done our homework in one way or the other, or in some cases, perhaps a story came out similarly on another outlet where now, of course, if it's a hot topic, they're going to want to cover it.
Sure.
So it's up to us to be proactive, and of course we utilize the same softwares that any of the industry or any of the top tier agencies do, to be able to be notified when those types of things are happening. So now, of course, it allows us to be ahead of the curve. And it could be something as simple as a tweet came out by a journalist related to a topic, and we're like, oh, this is hot.
Right. And you've done that with me. You've coached me. We'll sit in our weekly meetings, and you'll say, okay, this week, this is trending.
Right.
Elon's trending.
Right.
Or robotics is trending. Or COVID is just coming off the back end of it.
Right.
Sterilization using robots. Can you comment on that? I'm like, sweet spot. So
Right.
you start to understand what are my entry points into general public, because that's what's happening now is being able to reach the general public outside my echo chamber of my industry
Exactly.
is something that my industry's never thought of before. And that's a very, very powerful thing. So listen to that for a moment. Forever you've advertised inside your echo chamber. Yeah. And while that has made you some yardage gain, whether that yardage gain is money, talent, acquisition partners, you need to look outside of it, because now medtech, life sciences have now stepped way outside that physician, clinician, nurse, healthcare facility.
I mean, you don't really have to look too far from like the pharmaceutical companies that have, laid sort of like the foundation with commercials that are direct to consumer, and also not only that, but also websites. You have, websites dedicated to consumers, and then you click on the top and you can click on, the physician information. But yet you go to these medical device companies, and the information could literally be like Greek to the average consumer.
Still very pigeonholed.
Nothing's geared towards the average user. So that's why you have all these like consumer brands like Apple and the Amazons that are going to wedge in, because they know how to talk to Jane Doe that's sitting at home, and they know how to communicate to them
and the reason,
to get to their level, which medical device companies are just oblivious.
The reason the Apples, the Amazons, these companies are going to dominate, they're on a fast track, and they've certainly got the money to do so, is because they made a decision a long time ago to not just focus and pigeonhole themselves into one specific
genre.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, is they've understood the consumer mindset. And too many times in medtech, and this is one of the things that we had unpacked a number of years ago, which made our firm so successful, is stop thinking exclusively like a medtech player.
Right.
step back for a second and think like the consumer. And that has served us really well on behalf of our clients. It's why we dominate the talent access world on behalf of our clients who partner with us, because we're able to reach individuals with a different storytelling technique and a different emotional engagement, which is really what advertising is, other than sending out a job posting and putting a want ad on LinkedIn on behalf of a client and then just rattling off interview questions.
But let's talk about
building
that
these
for a moment.
stories.
Exactly. Let's talk about that for a moment. Let's step back and when did you pivot to doing these things? When did you realize, because you're obviously a mover and a shaker in that space, and you push the envelope, you walk the line, but yet you make sure that you're very close to the line.
Sure.
And it's important. I think that's what makes you as successful as you are, is you're not going to be pigeonholed into one set format that you're going to do for 40 years.
Right.
That's not how you think, and it's not how the world thinks anymore. So what woke you up? What made you think, I need to change? I need to start doing something to this industry because I feel it's not heading in the direction that the future is heading.
Yeah, and it was that. I've told the story once or twice. It was because of Google and because of Johnson & Johnson. It was that ill-fated trip out to Silicon Valley, and a dear friend Scott Hunnekens was launching the most sophisticated surgical robotic system of all time. That was a joint venture between Google and J&J, and we went out there, and he's like, listen, I got this huge hiring initiative, 300 plus people. They have to be from Tesla, they have to be from Apple, they have to be from Amazon, they have to be from Facebook, software engineers. And I said, sure, I can do that. I'm a headhunter. He said, but one thing, you can't show the robot. You can't show the inside of Google when they interview. They have to sit in this little 10 by 10 white room. And I need them all within 18 to 24 months. And he looks at me, can you still do this? And I'm like, yeah. I was a liar. And on the flight home, I'm like, holy crap, how am I going to do this? And then, I was never a big Facebook guy, or certainly not an Instagram guy at all, and never Twitter. And I was like, how am I going to do this? And then I just, for some reason, it was like, hold on. We're going to tell a story. We're going to start storytelling at scale and building a narrative around what this amazing thing that they're doing, from a top down to the world. And we went out and we got 2 college kids and started telling stories about how amazing of a career it would be to build the world's most sophisticated robot. And by the way, it happening in Silicon Valley. And it's a Google and J&J company. Wouldn't you want to be part of this amazing future? Wow. And we told stories about it. We never had a job description. We never told how much it was paying, and we nailed it. Wow. And then I saw that, we came back and I saw the ability to tell stories at scale while I was sleeping. I didn't have to get on the phone. And so with that started it, and I said, hold on, there's something here. And then I started being an engineer. I unwound it, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is just advertising on how the rest of the world works. It's how we buy cars. It's how we decide on where to go to vacation. It's how we decide on what hotel to stay in. It's all about branding and building a reputation. So that's how it started. And then we continued down that path on LinkedIn and dominated that in our space. But I knew that I only knew as much as I knew. And then when somebody's like, and then we did the docuseries. Then we did True Future.
So how did that come about?
Oh my God. Storytelling again around the industry. I was like, this industry is amazing. It's like there's entrepreneurs and visionaries doing amazing things and keeping people alive. And now we know that they're heroes because of COVID. We saw behind the scenes. We saw what ventilators were. We saw what doctors were saving lives. We saw people running towards almost near certain death if you were a caregiver. They knew that. It happened around the world, and it didn't just happen in your neighborhood. And so we knew before that started, those stories needed to be told to the public. And so we created a docuseries called True Future, which took us around the world, people, places, and tech. And we went to Ireland, and we went to Germany, and we went to Israel, and we went to San Francisco, and we went to Miami. And we told these amazing stories. And with that, people were like, wow. And our clients loved it, and the technology loved it, and we propped up the industry, and because of that, we were even further embraced by the industry.
And something that no one's ever done.
Nobody's ever done that either. So nobody's ever story told at scale on LinkedIn. We were one of the first video companies on LinkedIn. We had one of the earliest videos on LinkedIn to be deployed.
Wow.
Nobody's ever done a docuseries, right, on the medtech industry. And then we connected, and then there's no PR firm, there's no headhunting company that's ever had a PR firm at the scale that we're working with.
Right.
And then there's never been a headhunting firm that has been hired by clients, nothing to do with headhunting, but telling their stories to the public because we've done such a great job of telling our story.
Yeah.
Right.
And then now we have our clients talking to you because those really smart clients who already see the future,
The true future.
the true future, good one,
Right.
that see that, know they need to be connecting with the consumer outside of their comfortable echo chamber.
Right.
And, you know, this, I believe that PR, well done, not just PR in general, digital PR well done, needs to be a tent pole in any business model.
I agree.
You know, the same way you pay a top-end accountant, and the same way you pay a top-end landlord, and the same way you pay a top utility for your phone or your electric,
Right.
you better, and a top law firm, you better have a PR firm in your executive chamber.
Right. Because you know the combined value of, again, this visual storytelling, pumping out content like you've demonstrated and certainly had success with through Dragonfly stories and the True Future docuseries, and then amplifying that. You keep coming back to the amplifying part, but then making sure the world is aware of what you're doing and simultaneously working towards whatever your end goal is and whatever the company's end goal is.
And it's not,
And it'll propel that.
and it's not even telling my stories, right? So this is what we have to be sensitive to is I'm telling the story of the market.
Right.
Right.
I just happen to be the delivery system, right? So I look at our firm, the Mullings Group companies, almost like a TV network for the life sciences medtech industry. Why? Because NBC, CBS, ABC doesn't necessarily tell stories about themselves,
Right.
but they're the gateway to the stories that they believe the world wants to see.
Right.
And I look at TMG companies as a network. And it is telling the story about the people and the places and the tech and the challenges and the heartbreaks and the opportunities and the careers around the medtech industry. And we, you know, started with just 2 cameras, and then we launched Dragonfly, and then we launched True Future. And now you and Lobeline and Dragonfly are helping telling the stories of our clients.
Right.
It's not as much about Joe Mullings. It's about, look at the interim economy. That wasn't about me.
Right.
We forecast that industry.
Exactly. You predicted, you knew it was heading there, and you
We told the story about the industry
exactly before anyone else was talking about it.
before anybody else. And here's another thing, Jamie, that people have to understand this. Understand that working with a PR firm and building your brand and creating awareness and attention around that brand, the second you start to advertise about your company is when you start to lose.
Right.
When you start to provide a service and when you start to provide learning and inspiration and aspiration and moving the needle forward for an industry or a cause, the outcome will be success for you.
Right.
But you can't go into this as a self-serving initiative.
No. And it wouldn't be successful if you did. And I think that's part of, again, I mentioned to you earlier, we have a very intense vetting process for that exact reason. Because if you're an egomaniac and you just want to see yourself everywhere, that doesn't warrant PR. You know, there has to be a story that people are going to be interested in, but then there also has to be the person, you know, behind that story that the media is going to be interested in. So it's very much a dual prong, but it's a lot of work. You know, I'm glad you touched on that as well, because it is not a set and forget thing. You know, you very much have to be, much like in any industry, if you're not constantly thinking outside the box, you're not going to evolve, you know, as a company, as a person, as a brand, and that's, I think, one thing that people sometimes have a misconception of, they think that you can hire a firm who will do all the work. I pay you, so just do it. That doesn't work like that.
Yeah. Yeah, no. Miguel, what does the market need to understand about PR and digital and patience and ROI?
That's a loaded question. Like in terms of, I mean, nothing's overnight, right? So there's a build out in terms of getting all your social profiles set in order, understanding who your target market is, because when you're putting content out there, I mean, you can just put it out there and sort of see what catches on. But if you put any dollars behind it, that's where you can truly measure, for example, do people who have these certain interests, or do they engage better than group B? And you can sort of do A/B testing and whatever. And sort of there's patience in that, in the sense that nothing's overnight, and it takes a while to truly understand. Like, we have some client profiles that we built out that they think their target audience is XYZ, and it turns out it's completely different. Or some clients that come to us and say, oh, we want to be at X number of, subscribers or followers or whatnot, and it's just not realistic.
You said something on ROI, which I like, and I'll expand on Miguel's comment, because you can't think ROI on traditional PR.
Right.
And I said this to you earlier. The value for you is going to be very different than the value for a festival, for an artist, for an actor, everybody is going to have a very different profile. We have taken, I'll use a celebrity as an example. We've taken a celebrity, the one I'm thinking of 10 years ago, started with one TV show, now has 4, because of good PR and building that brand. And really, the reason that, the domino effect and the additional shows was that exposure, was how we portrayed, that actress in this case, to the media, and how the media then started to, not only the media, but of course these production companies as well for potential shows and eventually becoming a producer, they got to see and hear the story behind this person. So ROI is an interesting thing because, again, that example, perhaps 10 years ago, that actor may have been making very little, not very little, but I mean, it was still a lot perhaps back then. But now, if you're a producer on a show, obviously, it leads to a lot more. So using you as an example, I've said this to you, where in your industry, if you had an exit plan, so to speak, and you had all the, top tier placements, because there's a difference in PR as well. I mean, it's about who's writing about you. I mean, I could have you 5 days a week in somewhere, but that doesn't do you any value.
Right. Billy Bob's comic book.
Exactly. When we put you in something, when we email you and say this one has 158 million hits a month, that's the real deal. That's not something that you can just do overnight. It's something you have to build a foundation for. But ROI is a thing that people in our industry get very caught up on, and being the digital guys we love ROI. If you want to sell something online, I love being able to say to you, for every $1 that you paid us, we did a festival for, I think, a $250,000 budget. And we were able to demonstrate that for every $1 on marketing was about $7 to $10 yielded, depending on the campaign. Great. That's an anomaly, sorry, it's not always like that. But at the same time, ROI is not something in PR that can be measured. And there are softwares that will give you what an anticipated ROI is of that 158 million hits, for example, but that's not valid, because perhaps it elevated your profile through 5 or 10 placements where now you sold a company for $100 million. Well, what was the ROI of those placements? Versus a festival, a first-time festival, where, great, we sold you out. And again, I'm gonna use another example, we sold out a 10,000 person arena. Great, we sold out the arena. That's awesome. What was the ROI for that? It's a very different, you know what I mean? So you got
less tangible, I think, on the PR side, obviously, right? So if you get your Forbes placement, what does that really translate immediately? Like, that some clients are thinking, will that translate to an X amount in sales increase? There's no correlation, right? You can't really say, yeah, there might be a slight increase or whatever, maybe it'll blow up, but you can't really guarantee that. But there's a foundation that's building, right, over time. And you'll get your Forbes here, you'll get your Times here, you'll get your, your other placements. And overall, in time, that builds up into something. You can't put a dollar amount on that.
And
You
it builds,
can't.
I mean, you've been doing the visual storytelling for years. So now I'm willing to bet your decks, if they haven't already been updated, they will be soon, about why you're one of the world's top, I know you don't like the word headhunter, but talent access firms in your space or industry. And I'm sure your deck will now paint a picture of who Joe Mullings is.
Forbes, Business
Exactly.
Insider, right?
And
CNN,
this is why you're hiring me in your scenario to your client.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring that up, because the ROI is, I get that question a lot, right? It's like, Joe, because we get hired by firms to do their hiring narrative for them. It's not a PR firm, but it's a hiring narrative for clients. Nobody does tech better than us. I mean, I always call it tech porn when we go in and shoot it for our clients, right? But you can, in our business, and in a service business especially, you can weaponize your brand.
Right.
And that's what I tell my team
100%.
is we are going to build this turret, this brand, and we're going to aim it at the permanent search business. We're going to aim it at the interim contracting business. We're going to aim it at the hiring brand narrative business. Because of our turret, people will listen to what we have to say. It's very much like Nike. If Nike comes out with a new pair of shoes, or a sweat top, or a pair of shorts, if it has a Nike stamp on it, it gets the attention a lot quicker than Susie Q's shorts, who might actually be a better brand,
Right.
meaning construction, wickability, washability, endurance.
Exactly.
But that company that has a better brand will always outperform a company that has lesser of a brand.
And because they've invested in that brand.
Correct.
I mean, they've been, using Nike again as an example, these companies, they've been investing in any angle, any opportunity to elevate their brand, elevate whether they're doing stuff with the community, whether they're launching new products, whether they're, any opportunity at all, they're using traditional media to do digital storytelling or do visual storytelling to the public to elevate their brand and to ultimately, like you said, whether they're better or not, people think they are.
Not
That's
only
what it
that,
boils down to.
But you do that, I mean, it's also in their best interest, not only because hopefully it leads to more sales, but also to attract talent, right? So if they want the best people, they're gonna choose the Nikes of the world versus, Johnny Q short company out in Ohio, who probably has a better product, like you say, that probably more advanced materials they work with. But I mean, let's be real. They want to work with the Nikes. The brands are out there that can elevate themselves.
Yeah. And from the venture capital part, we had this conversation because we are having some dialogue with some of my clients and partnering with Dragon and Lobeline and developing them. Look, here's what venture capitalists will tell you if they're going to invest in a company. We bet on the entire team, but we bet on the jockey before the horse.
Exactly.
Right.
And so if I'm a CEO and I am managing my own startup company, or I've got a couple companies, it makes sense for me to establish my brand. Right? Especially if I'm going out looking for a B round for 12 million or a C round for 40 million, or a D round for 50 million. And if I can appear, because there's reason for me, and I tell the right story and I part with the right firm, for me to spend, and I'm just going to spitball this, $200,000 to $300,000 a year on developing that brand and working with a Lobeline, that is a no-brainer investment, because the number of opportunities is going to be dramatically higher. Validation, as you pointed out, from industry platinum standard is there. And you can then take that placement and deploy it at scale on multiple platforms and tell multiple stories around that pivot point and beat it to death, meaning in a good way, and getting your value out of it.
And the ROI, again, you can't put a value on it, and we'll keep saying that, but the ROI could be the difference of a 3 or 4 multiple in a scenario like you just gave.
Oh, easy.
At a minimum.
Easy. Or you have multiple investors looking to step in. And again, it's that old adage of, if I had a product in medtech right now, I would absolutely want it to be featured in a non-medtech social platform.
Yeah.
Because I would want to go direct to customer. You know why? I can then take that medical device and then run that PR and run a test and see what kind of engagement I get, what kind of interest in the product I get, what kind of readership, and then I can take that data and connect that back to potential on adoptability and usability in regards to the device. So, and then also for clinical trial recruiting, is if I'm featured in Forbes or I'm featured in CNBC, and it's out there and said clinical trials will be starting, blah, blah, blah. Building that awareness around that disease state and then sharing that with whatever organizations specialize in that disease state will help me now recruit for clinical trials, which is one of the biggest burns, because the longer it takes for you to do your trial because you can't find patients, the more money you're spending at $1 million to $2 million a month on a burn.
Exactly.
So.
And you're, again, an interesting example because you have a history and experience beyond what a lot of clients have, because you've done business with the biggest companies. They trust you, they've retained you, but it's within that space that they know you. Prior to us name dropping, which we do all the time, of course, we're happy to name drop. I mean, you have 5-star recommendations from the world's biggest entities that control half the world. So of course we want to name drop, and we want to make sure that these people are writing about that. So I think, again, it adds legitimacy to who you are, but it now gets you outside of not just those companies, but now when you have a new device, let's use that as an example, that's about to go to market, you're the guy. Now they see, oh my God, look at what this guy has done. Look at the robot he built with Google and Johnson & Johnson. Look at, it again puts an extra layer of authenticity, I think, behind.
Gravitas.
Right.
Yeah.
And it breaks down barriers, right? I mean,
my gosh, yeah.
Because you've laid the groundwork, someone can go to you, a company, and go, listen, I want, I need to bring this product to market. You're already there. You laid the groundwork. You can go back to your network and be like, and to your contacts and the relationships you set with the media, and you can say, look what I have. Look at the story I have to tell about this. So it just becomes so much easier, so much time saved and energy.
And we talked about that. So we've even played with that idea amongst us. I said, look, and we had this conversation 5 years ago, coming up this summer. We were down the street in a hotel for a summer break session, and it's very much along the lines of what you just said. And I explained to my team what we were doing on the digital strategy, and of course they looked at me like I lost my mind. I said, look, there was a guy named Vanderbilt who built the railroad across this country a long time ago, and they thought he was crazy. He was going to lay rails from the East Coast to the West Coast. And he said, you know what, if you've got to move chickens or bricks or timber or coal or livestock across this country, you got to sit on my rails. And I'm going to deliver your product, and you're going to be happy. And I'm going to offer you the best price, the best value, but I'm going to get it there so it doesn't have a high level of perishability on it. And your livestock's going to be alive when it gets there, and you're not going to use as much money if you're going on a covered wagon. And I told my team, we are going to be the Vanderbilt of medtech life science, because anybody who wants to get their product to market and build an awareness attention model around it, I want to have the rails in the medtech industry. So to your point, they're going to come to me and be like, Joe, I've got this device. Can we get on your platform to share it with the world?
And this is why I'm most excited about this, partnership together with Dragonfly. Is we're now taking what you've already perfected, the visual storytelling. We're being able to, tap into that life science space, which is going to explode more than ever. Taking that space, opening its eyes, if you will, getting outside of the same outlets that cover
Sure, the provincial stuff.
Going outside that, getting in the more mainstream stuff, building more legitimacy, getting in front of the general public and consumer, which is where the market is heading. But really turning this into a well-oiled machine where you and Dragonfly are pumping out content, and through our partnership, we're then taking that content and unfolding it to the world in every possible way that we can, so that You know, you always say whether it's, you know, Johnny Six Pack or Susie.
Susie Six Pack or Johnny Double Wide.
Right. Exactly, where they can understand it.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, again, you know, why we're so excited about going into this space together, because you know this space inside out. We know marketing inside out, and we know we're damn good at it. You know, I'm not going to toot our own. I guess I did toot our own horn, but you know you're damn good at what you do. You know, so it's like
Unapologetically, if you know me, right?
But the combined forces of the two now,
Right.
we're going to be able to tap a space that hasn't really been shaken up like this. You know,
No, very true, very true. I heard something about tequila. All right, I'll take us out then.
Cheerios.
Cheers, man.
thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to take us out. Gents, thanks for coming in from LA amid the COVID crisis. I saw you in the picture with your mask on. It was awesome. And this is the, I think, first of many to expose the value and the power of branding, attention, awareness around both individuals as well as products. So,
Definitely. Thanks for having us.
you bet.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Joe Mullings, and this has been Untitled and Unfiltered. Be well.